obliged to you for tuning in to Satisfied Saturday. I deeply appreciate your time, and I promise that it will not be a waste. Here's sending you another great big warm, social distancing warm virtual hug. Quickly tag someone, like, share, your watch party, chime in and give me a shout out and let me know how you like Satisfied Saturday. Also, let me know where you're located, because we're coming from many places in the United States of America and beyond, and so we are excited about that. It is my desire to make Satisfied Saturday both meaningful, informative, and enlightening. This is not a preaching format, but is designed to address relative and current events that will impact and edify your life and mine as well. I call this program Satisfied Saturday because after Monday through Friday of both victories and defeat, ups and downs, ins and outs, we have survived the good and the bad, the happy and the sad. Do the math, and I promise you, when you add it all up, there will be more positive than negative. That should give you a sense of fulfillment, contentment, gratification, delight, and joy. And ultimately, we have Satisfied Saturday. I like the sound of that. Can you believe that this year, 2020, is swiftly coming to a close? I must say that I am extremely happy. This year has been an emotional roller coaster and a psychological and a physical challenging one. I wanted to call this year a Roaring 20 year, but it has been quite different than the 1920s, the Roaring 20s back in the 1920s. For the time of economic growth and widespread it was just up on the rise, and there was prosperity. After World War I, it was a happy time. Industry and technology was booming, with the large development of automobiles, telephones, radios, and kitchen appliances, which provided jobs for the men. Amen? For the men had started working. Women learned the right to vote. They earned it, and they learned how to vote. And they stopped wearing corsets, and corsets is what you call girdles back in the day, and they felt free. They felt an element of freedom. And they would wear long hair, but ladies, they started cutting their hair. Their hair was shorter, and so were their skirts to match the hair. They wore makeup and were permitted to smoke in public. Jazz had free course. It was a good time. It was the provocative. It was a sexy time. It was the dance, the Charleston. They were kicking high, and they were having a wonderful time because of prosperity. Even for the African Americans, millions of them migrated from the South to the North to escape segregation and racism, and my family was part of that. My father, we migrated to the South for better opportunities. It was in fact the beginning of a new era, a new decade called the Roaring 20s. Unfortunately, listen carefully, 2020, when 2020 came in, it was a new decade, a new era. And it came in with a roar, but this roar was diametrically in opposition with the Roaring 20s. The Roaring 20s was a joyous, productive, and a time of prosperity that had occurred in the beginning of the Roaring 20s. This was definitely a different roar when we hit 2020. I literally grappled or struggled trying to find words to describe this year, 2020. It definitely was a roar, but far from a welcoming one. Webster defines roar as a loud, deep, prolonged, enormous, and tremendous, unmitigated sound. A sound that will not lessen or diminish in intensity or severity, a roar. This was a frightening year. It was a year that it just seems like it's really hard to put it into, to articulate. It was a year of global corona, the virus, where over 250,000 people have died. It was a year of surging riots and racism and police brutality, social injustice, white supremacy, terminations, layoffs, masks, social distancing. It has been a roar. And to top it all off, 2020 was the year of the presidential election. It was a historic turnout in terms of voting. More Americans voted in 2020 than in any other election in the United States history. Clearly, Joe Biden won the election with more than 270 electoral votes that was required. President Trump ran extremely well, and you have to give him credit. But at the end of the day, there can only be one president. I am beyond thrilled that President-elect Joe Biden and our first Black and Indian American woman, Madam Vice President, we've got to get used to saying that, elect Kamala Harris, are headed to the White House. The pair will be sworn into office on January the 20th, 2021. There's that 20 again. And it has that roaring, loud, unrelenting sound because President Trump is refusing to concede, has not prepared a concession speech, and to date has no intention of doing so. The word concede means to admit that something is true or valid after first denying or resisting it. Concede means to admit. It means to acknowledge. It means to accept. It means to recognize or be cognizant of. It means to own up to. It means to confess. It means to give up the struggle. It means to capitulate. It means to give in. My heart goes out to Trump, and I'm concerned because he is not accustomed to losing. He's accustomed to winning. That's why he is ranting and raving and tweeting and filing numerous lawsuits with little merits. At this point, as a reasonable person, he wants a recount. And because of the recount, I feel like it's okay for him to do that. I feel like he is justified in doing a recount. Trump has every right and desire to even demand a recount, but from the looks of it, the count is in favor of President-elect Biden. It means that he will have to, at some point, concede. And now he appears to be almost delusional. As I wrap this up in closing, there are two words that I believe President Trump struggles with. And those two words are change and transition. Initially, I used those words interchangeably, but after research, I discovered that change and transition are diametrically opposed to one another. They are not the same. They're in the same family, just like first and second cousin, but they're not the same. The word change means to become different in shape, form, or action. Change is the event that happens or situations we find ourselves in that are suddenly different. Change of mind, change of job, change of location, change of clothes. Change happens, but change are circumstances. Change is external. Change is visible. But transition is internal. Transition is psychological and is the internal process that you undergo to come to grips or come to terms with the change. The word transition comes from the word transit. Transition is a voyage from one place to another. And that transition is what can make you or break you. In a transition, just like a voyage, there are 3 phases that we go through. And this is where the struggle is. Number 1, first phase is the departure, time to leave. The point when we leave a familiar or a well-known place or circumstances that may affect us psychologically, mentally, or emotionally. Departure. It could be positive and you feel released, or it could be negative and you feel sad or fearful, hopeless or helpless. Number 2, the next phase is transition, is disorientation. The experience of breaking connection with what we once knew and wandering in new territory, which may cause us to feel lost, uneasy, and unsettled. So you become disoriented. And the last phase is the destination, the point where we arrive at the new normal. It may experience a combination of relief, excitement, or fear. It depends on how you're handling the change. Change is the event. Transition is the response to the change. It's how you respond to your change. Transition may seem like a fancy word for change, but the 2 situations are different, and understanding the difference is key to successful navigating life's unexpected changes. Most people want to be in control of their lives, and they take steps to be prepared, which is why unexpected changes can be so difficult to accept. Faced with something we can't control, we may experience feelings of surprise, confusion, overwhelmness, or fear. Change is the event, the circumstances, the situation. Transition is the response. It's the reaction. It's the coping mechanism to the change. I have empathy for President Trump. He has to change from being one of the most important men in the world to relinquishing that honor to someone else. I remember when I became a pastor's wife, that was a drastic change. The expectations were seemingly unsurmountable. The dress, the deportment, the demeanor, the expectations, the requirements, the stipulations. I accepted the change externally. From the outside, I looked fine. But the struggle was internal. It was a mental fight. The psychological and emotional adjustment was the transformation. It's been over 35 years and I'm still adjusting to the change. Half of the battle was the change, and the other half was conceding to the transformation. I had to admit that the calling was true and valid after first denying or resisting it. I had to admit, I had to acknowledge, I had to accept, I had to recognize, I had to own up to, I had to confess, I had to give up the struggle, I had to capitulate, to give in. I had to relinquish. I had to let go of the old Lady J and embrace the new Lady J as a pastor's wife. That's why I have empathy for Donald Trump. I actually prayed for him. I prayed the serenity prayer. God grant him the serenity to accept the things that he cannot change, and the courage, the audacity to change the things that he can change, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's the transition. At one point or another, life will present us all with unexpected turn of events. A change, accepting the change, is half the battle. The other half is dealing with the transition. That's when you start feeling some kind of way and start walking around with circumstantial behavior. But you know what? You have to stop allowing your situation to take you out of character. And I believe that our president is allowing this change and this transformation to take him out of character, which is really depicting what's really on the inside. Sometimes people can put on a facade and they can dress up the outside, but situations and transitions can depict what's really going on the inside. For an example, change versus transition. Single versus married. That's a transition. The wedding is the change. Oh, you spend a lot of money, the bride does. She walks down the aisle and she's looking wonderful, meeting that man of her life, the knight in shining armor. That's the change. But the marriage is the transition. You cannot hold on to single habits with marriage. You have to get rid of the black book. And I don't know what color it is for a woman, but she has to get rid of her book as well because she has to accept the transition. The single selfishness, the mindset. And there is a song that it goes, a change has come over me. He changed my life, and now I'm free. See, there's a freedom when you change, and when you accept, when you acknowledge, when you give in, when you give into the transition. Half of the battle is the change. The other half is the transition. A change has come over our President Trump. Now he has to deal with the transition. And I remember back in the day, I may be aging or dating myself, but I remember when we used to have to get a transfer when we rode the bus. How many of you remember those days when you rode the bus? You had to do something with a transfer. Transfer means that you have been dropped off at one location, but you're not at your destination. And so you ask for a transfer. This is what our president has to deal with. He has to deal with, he is in one position, and now he has to ask for a transfer because he is not where he is supposed to be in 2021. His address will change. His life will change. And he has to deal with the change. Something about change as I close is we all are in a change. Some kind of way we're changing. We're changing addresses, we're changing vocations. We're changing, hopefully not husbands or wives, because you're supposed to do it from death do you part, sickness, health, for better or worse. worst. But we change. And in changing, we have to deal with the transition. Now, I want you to go out and enjoy this wonderful, satisfied Saturday. This is a wonderful day. This is a great day. I want you to go out and make a difference in your community. And maybe not even in your community, but even maybe stop in your home, in your neighborhood. Then you go to your community. And then you can even make a change in your church. But I want you to go out and make this a wonderful day. This has been Satisfied Saturday. My name is Lady J. And remember, change versus transition. The change is the process. Transition is how you deal with the process. Go out and make this a fabulous day.